वेलकम टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल द सोलफुल डायरी। आज के वीडियो में हम बात करेंगे सिल्विया प्लाथ और उनकी पोम डैडी के बारे में। पोम के बारे में डिस्कस करने से पहले पोएट के बारे में डिस्कस कर लेते हैं। Plath was born on October 27, 1932 in Boston, Massachusetts. Her mother, Aurelia Scrobber, was a master's student at Boston University when she met Plath's father, Otto Plath, who was her professor. They were married in January of 1932. Otto taught both German and biology with a focus on apology, the study of bees. In 1940, when Plath was 8 years old, her father died as a result of complications from diabetes. He had been strict and both his authoritarian attitudes and his death drastically defined Plath's relationship and her poems, most notably in her elegiac and famous poem, Daddy. Plath kept a journal from the age of 11 and published her poems in regional magazines and newspapers. Her first national publication was in the Christian Science Monitor in 1950, just after graduating from high school. In 1950, Plath matriculated at Smith College, where she graduated summa cum laude in 1955. After graduation, Platt moved to Cambridge, England on a Fulbright scholarship. In early 1956, she attended a party and met the English poet Ted Hughes. Shortly thereafter, Platt and Hughes were married on June 16, 1956. Platt returned to Maastricht in 1957 and began studying with Robert Lowell. Her first collection of poems, Colossus, was published in 1916 in England, and 2 years later in the United States. She returned to England, where she gave birth to her children Frida and Nicholas in 1960 and 1962 respectively. In 1962, Ted Hughes left Plath for Asia Gutman Wavell. That winter, Plath wrote most of the poems that would comprise her famous book Ariel. The following year, Plath published a semi-autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar, under the pseudonym Victoria Lucas. She died on February 11, 1963. Plath's poetry is often associated with the confessional movement and compared to the work of poets such as Lowell and fellow student Anne Sexton. Often her work is singled out for the intense coupling of its violent or disturbed imagery and its playful use of alliteration and rhyme. Although only Colossus was published while she was alive, Plath was a prolific poet, and in addition to Ariel, Hughes published 3 or 4 other volumes of her work posthumously, including the collected poems, which was the recipient of the 1982 Pulitzer Prize. Plath was the first poet to posthumously win a Pulitzer Prize. पोम को इन डेप्थ डिस्कस करने से पहले जान लेते हैं उसके कुछ की फीचर्स. Daddy by Sylvia Plath uses emotional and sometimes painful metaphors to depict the poet's opinion of her father and other men in her life. The poem uses emotional and sometimes painful metaphors to depict the poet's own opinion of her father. The poem begins with the speaker describing her father in several different striking ways. He sat once a black shoe she was trapped within a vampire, a fascist, and a Nazi. While alive and since his death, she has been trapped by his life. He holds her back and contains her in a way she is trying to contend with. She has to kill her father in order to get away from him. Stanza 1. You do not do any more black shoe in which I have lived like a foot. For 30 years, poor and wide, barely daring to breathe or achoo. In this first stanza of Daddy, the speaker reveals that the subject of whom she speaks is no longer there. This is why she says and repeats, You do not do. The following line is rather surprising as it does not express loss or sadness. On the contrary, it begins to reveal the nature of this particular father daughter relationship. The speaker compares her father to a black shoe It seems like a strange comparison until the third line reveals that the speaker herself has felt like a foot that has been forced to live 30 years in that shoe. The foot is poor and white because for 30 years it has been suffocated by the shoe and never allowed to see the light of the day. The last line in this stanza reveals that the speaker felt not only suffocated by her father but fearful of him as well. In fact, she expresses that her fear of him was so intense that she was afraid to even breathe or sneeze. Stanza 2. Daddy, I had to kill you. You died before I had time. Marble heavy, a bag full of God. Ghastly statue with one great toe, big as a fresco seal. In the second stanza, the speaker reveals her own personal desire to kill her father. The first line states, I had to kill you. The next line goes on to explain that the speaker actually did not have time to kill her father because he died before she could manage to do it. She does not make this confession regretfully or sorrowfully. Rather, she calls him a bag full of God, which suggests that her view of her father, as well as her view of God, was one of fear and trepidation. She describes him as a ghastly statue with one great toe, big as a fresco seal. Her description of her father as a statue suggests that she saw no capacity for feeling in him. A fresco seal refers to one of the sea lions that can be seen in San Francisco. When she describes that one of his toes is as big as a seal, it reveals to the reader just how enormous and overbearing her father seemed to her. He was hardened without feelings, and now that he is dead, she thinks he looks like an enormous, ominous statue. Stanza 3. And ahead in the freakish Atlantic, where it pours beam green over blue in the waters of beautiful Nauset, I used to pray to recover you. Act 2. Here, looking at her dead father, the speaker describes the gorgeous scenery of the Atlantic Ocean and the beautiful area of Nauset. However, she also uses the word freakish to precede her descriptions of the beautiful Atlantic Ocean. This reveals that even though her father may have been a beautiful specimen of a human being, she knew personally that there was something awful about him. In the final two lines of this stanza, the speaker reveals that at one point during her father's sickness, she even prayed that he would never recover. The last line of the stanza is the German phrase of for OU. Stanza 4. In the German tongue, in the Polish town, scrapped flat by the roller of wars, wars, wars. But the name of the town is common, my Pollock friend. In stanza 4 of Daddy, the speaker begins to wonder about her father and his origins. The speaker knows that he came from a Polish town where German was the main language spoken. She explains that the town he grew up in had endured one war after another. She would never be able to identify which specific town he was from because the name of his hometown was a common name. The stanza ends mid sentence. The speaker begins to explain that she learned something from her Polak friend. Stanza 5. Say there are a dozen or two, so I never could tell where you put your foot, your root. I never could talk to you. The tongue stuck in my jaw. Here, the speaker finishes what she began to explain in the previous stanza by explaining that she learned from a friend that the name of the Polish town her father came from was a very common name. For this reason, she concludes that she could never tell where he put his foot. It's clear she will not ever be able to know exactly where his roots are from. She had never asked him because she could never talk to him. After this, the speaker then explains that she was afraid to talk to him. She states, the tongue stuck in my jaw when explaining the way she felt when she wanted to talk to her father. It Stanza 6. It's stuck in a barbed wire snare. Itch, 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 itch. I could hardly speak. I thought every German was you, and our language obscene. In this stanza, she continues to describe the way she felt around her father. She felt as though her tongue was stuck in barbed wire. Itch is the German word for eye. This reveals that whenever she wanted to speak to her father, she could only stutter and say, I. She then describes that she thought every German man was her father. This reveals that she does not distinguish him as someone familiar and close to her. Rather, she sees him as she sees any other German man, harsh, obscene. Stanza 7. An engine, chuffing me off like a Jew to Dachau, Auschwitz, Belsen. I began to talk like a Jew. I think I may well be a Jew. In this stanza, the speaker begins to reveal to the readers that she felt like a Jew under the reign of her German father. This is a very strong comparison, and the speaker knows this and yet does not hesitate to use this simile. The oppression which she has suffered under the reign of her father is painful and unbearable. Something she feels compares to the oppression of the Jews under the Germans in the Holocaust. For this reason, she specifically mentions Auschwitz among other concentration camps. She then concludes that she began to talk like a Jew, like one who was oppressed and silenced by German oppressors. Then she concludes that because she feels the oppression that the Jews feel, she identifies with the Jews and therefore considers herself a Jew. Stanza 8. The snows of the Tyrol, the clear beer of Vienna, are not very pure or true. With my gypsy ancestresses and my weird luck and my tarot pack, I may be a bit of a Jew. In the stanza, the speaker continues to criticize the Germans as she compares the snows of Tyrol and the clear beer of Vienna to the Germans' idea of racial purity. She concludes that they are not very pure or true. Then the speaker considers her ancestry and the gypsies that were part of her heritage. Gypsies, like Jews, were singled out for execution by the Nazis, and so the speaker identifies not only with Jews but also with gypsies. In fact, she seems to identify with anyone who has ever felt oppressed by the Germans. In the last line of the stanza, the speaker suggests that she is probably part Jewish and part gypsy. Stanza 9. I have always been scared of you, with your left waff, your goblet go, and your neat moustache, and your iron eye, bright blue. Panzer man, oh you. Here the speaker finally finds the courage to address her father. Now that he is dead, she admits that she has always been afraid of him. She implies that her father had something to do with the Air Force, as that is how the word Luftwaffe translates to English. Gobbledygook, however, is simply gibberish. This implies that the speaker feels that her father and his language made no sense to her. In this instance, she felt afraid of him and feared everything about him. She never was able to understand him, and he was always someone to fear. She was afraid of his neat moustache and his iron eye, bright blue. This description of his eyes implies that he was one of those Germans whom the Nazis believed to be a superior race. He was iron with blue eyes. He was something fierce and terrifying to the speaker, and she associates him closely with the Nazis. A Panzerman was a German tank driver, and so this continues the comparison between her father and a Nazi. Stanza 10. Not good, but a swastika. So black, no sky could squeak through. Every woman adores a fascist. The boot on the face, the brute heart of a brute like you. In the stanza, The speaker compares her father to God. She clearly sees God as an ominous, overbearing being who clouds her world. This is why she describes her father as a giant black swastika that covered the entire sky. The third line of the stanza begins a sarcastic description of women and men like her father. She mockingly says every woman adores a fascist, and then begins to describe the violence of men like her father. She uses the word brute three times in the last two lines of the stanza. If these lines were not written in jest, then she clearly believes that women, for some reason or another, tend to fall in love with violent brutes. Stanza 11. You stand at the blackboard, Daddy. In the picture I have of you, a cleft in your chin instead of your foot, but no less a devil for that. No, not any less the black man who. In the first line of the stanza, the speaker describes her father as a teacher standing at the blackboard. The author's father was, in fact, a professor. This is how the speaker views her father. She can see the cleft in his chin as she imagines him standing there at the blackboard. Then she describes that the cleft that is in his chin should really be in his foot. This simply means that she views her father as the devil himself. The devil is often characterized as an animal with cleft feet, and the speaker believes he wears his clefts on his chin rather than on his feet. Her description of her father as a black man does not refer to his skin color, but rather to the darkness of his soul. The stanza ends with the word who because the author breaks the sentence stanza mid sentence. Stanza 12. Bit my pretty red heart in two. I was 10 when they buried you. At 20, I tried to die and get back to you. I thought even the bones would do. With the first line of the stanza, the speaker finishes her sentence and reveals that her father has broken her heart. She says that he has bit her pretty red heart in two. The rest of the stanza reveals a deeper understanding of the speaker's relationship with her father. Even though he was a cruel, overbearing brute, at one point in her life she loved him dearly. It is possible that as a child she was able to love him despite his cruelty. As an adult, however, she cannot see past his vices. The stanza reveals that the speaker was only 10 years old when her father died, and that she mourned for him until she was 20. She even tried to end her life in order to see him again. She thought that even if she was never to see him again in an afterlife, to simply have her bones buried by his bones would be enough of the comfort to her. 13. But they pulled me out of the sack and they stuck me together with glue. And then I knew what to do. I made a model of you, a man in black with a Mein Kampf look. In the stanza, the speaker reveals that she was not able to commit suicide, even though she tried. She reveals that she was found and pulled out of the sack and stuck back together with glue. At this point, the speaker experienced a revelation. She realized that she must recreate her father. She decided to find and love a man who reminded her of her father. Freud's theory on the Oedipus complex seems to come into play here. The theory that girls falls in love with their father as children and boys with their mother also suggests that these boys and girls grow up to find husbands and wives that resemble their fathers and mothers. The speaker has already suggested that women love a brutal man, and perhaps she is now confessing that she was once such woman. This is why the speaker says that she finds a model of her father who's a man in black with a McCamp look. While McCamp means my struggle, the last line of the stanza most likely means that the man she found to marry looked like her father and like Hitler. Stanza 14. And the love of the rack and the screw. And I said, I do, I do. So, Daddy, I'm finally through. The black telephone's off at the root. The voices just can't warm through. In this stanza, the speaker reveals that the man she married enjoyed to torture. This is why she describes him as having a love of the rack and the screw. She confesses that she married him when she says, and I said, I do, I do. Then she tells her father that she is true. This means that having recreated her father by marrying a harsh German man, she no longer needed to mourn her father's death. She then describes her relationship with her father as a phone call. Now she has hung up and the call is forever ended. Chapter 15. If I have killed one man, I have killed two. The vampire who said he was you and drank my blood for a year. 7 years, if you want to know. Daddy, you can lie back now. In this stanza of Daddy, the speaker reminds the readers that she has already claimed to have killed her father. She revealed that he actually died before she could get to him, but she still claims the responsibility for his death. Now she says that if she has killed one man, she has killed two. This is most likely in reference to her husband. She refers to her husband as a vampire, one who was supposed to be just like her father. As it turned out, he was not just like her father. In fact, he drained the life from her. This is why she refers to him as a vampire who drank her blood. It is not clear why she first says that he drank her blood for a year. However, the speaker then changes her mind and says 7 years, if you want to know. When the speaker says, Daddy, you can lie back now, she's telling him that the part of him that has lived on with her can die now too. Stanza 16. There's a stake in your fat black heart, and the villagers never liked you. They're dancing and stamping on you. They always knew it was you. Daddy, Daddy, you bastard, I'm true. In this stanza, the speaker reveals that her father, though dead, has somehow lived on like a vampire to torture her. It is claimed that she must kill her father the way that a vampire must be killed, with a stake to the heart. She then goes on to explain to her father that the villagers never liked you. She explains that they dance and stomp on his grave. The speaker says that the villagers always knew it was him. This suggests that the people around them always suspected that there was something different and mysterious about her father. With the final line, the speaker tells her father that she is true with him while he has been dead for years. It is clear that her memory of him has caused her great grief and struggle. The speaker was unable to move on without acknowledging that her father was in fact a brute. Once she was able to come to terms with what he truly was, she was able to let him stop torturing her from the grave. Poetic devices, metaphor. Platt uses metaphors to convey her feelings about her father, comparing him to a Nazi, a sadist, and a vampire. Juxtaposition. Platt uses juxtaposition to emphasize contrast such as between innocence and pain. Enjambment. Platt uses enjambment where a line is cut off before its natural stopping point to force the reader to move quickly to the next line. Imagery. Platt uses related imagery to the Holocaust and Nazism to symbolize the pain of oppression. For example, she compares her tongue to being caught in the barbed wire snare. Rhyme, tone, and simile. Platt uses rhyme, tone, and simile to convey her feelings of anger, resentment, and oppression. In regards to the most important themes in Daddy, one should consider the conversation Platt has in the text about the oppressive nature of a father daughter relationship. The theme of freedom from oppression or from captivity is prevalent throughout this text and others Platt wrote. Despite her father's death, she was obviously still held wrapped by his life and how he lived. That being said, life and death should also be considered important themes within Platt's study. Without her father living as he did and dying when he did while Platt was quite young, this poem would not exist as it does. थैंक यू आई होप आज की वीडियो आपको पसंद आई अगर अच्छी लगी तो कमेंट करके बताएं और हमें ये भी कमेंट करके बताएं कि आप आने वाली वीडियोस किस टॉपिक पर देखना चाहते हैं मिलते हैं कल एक और इन्फॉर्मेटिव वीडियो के साथ शाम 4 बजे थैंक यू